Remember, guys, if you put it on the prompter, I will read it. How are you, Mr. Emanuel?
Who put a question mark in the prompter? Don't you know who'll read anything?
I'm John Howell. Well, I thought you'd get a kick out of it. They left it up here for me, so I said, did you talk with Connor? Yes. Okay. Just leave it. Just leave it on the prompter. Are you hearing from any Republicans quietly that with Georgia now on board, enough is enough and maybe Donald Trump has to withdraw?
Well, I think there are some, and I think there are candidates who obviously are hoping that he'll move things along and realize, like, there are so many charges right now that could, have serious consequences for his life if, he loses these cases. And so, we've heard talks about $40 million in legal fees or whatever already this year. So money's being sucked away from his campaign to pay the lawyers. And so I think there are a lot of folks here in Washington who are kind of thinking that, when's enough going to be enough? Obviously, they recognize that he is the leader in the race so far. But there's also this poll number that came out today that's raised tremendous eyebrows across Washington and Republican circles. 64% of Americans say they definitely or probably will not vote for Trump in 2024. 53% saying definitely, 11% probably. Mark Thiessen of the Washington Post described that as like watching a slow-moving train wreck for the GOP.
His refusal to sign the loyalty pledge again puts the RNC in a bit of a bind, even if he does show up at the debate. Is the RNC holding to that pledge to allow the candidates on the stage?
Look, to be candid, I think when it comes to former President Trump, there are two sets of rules in the Republican Party. Ronna McDaniel's basically saying, please, please, please come. It would be a much better show if you're on that stage. You are the former leader of the party and right now the current leader in the race to be the future leader of the party. And so it would be great to have you. And if he says, I'm not signing any stinking pledge, my guess is she would probably cave on that. But, a lot of the other candidates have signed and I think, the party would love for them all to sign, but former President Trump's going to do what former President Trump wants to do.
Christie signed it, I guess, but then almost immediately said, like, it means nothing. It's not worth the paper it's written on.
Well, yeah, because I think Christie's saying, if Trump's the guy, then you're not going to get me to support him. So I think there's maneuvering and jockeying and all this kind of stuff.
Comes down to the definition of support. If support means talk about him, I'm in on that.
Oh, yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. Mike Emanuel is here. He anchors Fox News Sundays at high noon. Any other anchoring duties that I should mention?
Well, thank you for asking. Saturday, I am doing 11 a.m. your time to 1 p.m. So if you're near a TV, check it out. I'll be wearing a fresh tie and shirt that day. And,
nice. Nice.
You can let me know if it stinks or not.
No pocket square, right? You've decided to forego pocket squares?
Yeah, I'm not that huge on the hanky. Just like to keep it simple.
Yeah, I think that's a better look. Pocket squares, unless they're absolutely perfectly done, they detract from everything else.
Yeah, people are looking at it going like, is that too fluffy or not fluffy enough or whatever?
Looking at it going, what are you, colorblind? I mean, you did not own a mirror? All right.
I thought that was a good idea.
So, the White House is defending Biden after criticism over his Maui response or lack thereof. Yep. Is it considered absolutely necessary in this day and age for a president to show up?
Well, I just think it was striking that he was out, biking over the weekend, and a reporter from the pool said, your thoughts on Maui? And he said, no comment. It just, was striking. And I don't know whether his aide said, if you run into a reporter, don't talk. And so he said no comment. But I would think in any other circumstance when there's at least 100 Americans dead and maybe many more, that you would drop everything and have a moment and, be comforter in chief from long distance, from Delaware in that case. And so a tough moment. He's going to go next week, and I think throw his arm around a lot of folks in Maui, and Dr. Biden and his wife will go with him. And so I would assume that will be very compelling for folks in that community. But I think they were off to a rough start. And certainly Karine Jean-Pierre was very defensive about their response to this crisis.
But, I guess that everybody, all political handlers, red or blue, realize how badly burned Bush 43 was, flying over the devastation of New Orleans after Katrina. I get that. And Trump went to Puerto Rico after a hurricane, and the photo op of him tossing paper towels to people, he's pillarized for that from the opposite side of the political world. But don't presidents and all that they come with, don't they detract? Don't they kind of futz up the relief efforts and actually do more harm than good while they're on the ground there? Yeah,
and so I think Biden gets a pass in terms of waiting until next week to go, because the most serious rescue and recovery operation, you don't want to be hampered by Secret Service crawling through everything and the entourage coming through. So he's going to go next week, but I think in terms of the initial response,
no comment.
No comment was not a winner.
See, if I was his political handler, I'd say, I'd like you to remember that phrase and use it a lot more in other situations. But this wasn't one.
When Peter Doocy gets in your face
just
and
say no
you a tough
comment.
question,
no
comment.
That's when you say no comment.
But when asked about people suffering in an American state, stop and say something heartfelt.
Finally, maybe the most important story that's underreported today, a Ukrainian ship against Russian wishes and threats carrying grain has sailed away from Odessa. Is anybody paying attention to the rest of the world in D.C. today?
Well, the circus is out of town. Congress is on August recess, so they are not here. But I presume the folks at the Pentagon and the State Department and other key agencies are watching it very closely, because that is a significant item you point out. It's not getting the news coverage that, except on the John Howell show, that it deserves. But I presume that there are folks at these important agencies keeping a close eye on it, because it is a significant moment and, could be a hot spot if the Russians go after that ship.
We must have planes in the air 24/7, I would assume. It's extraordinarily expensive, but probably very prudent to do so.
I would agree with you 100%.
All right, so 11 o'clock on Saturday Central, high noon on Sunday Central Time in the anchor chair.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. We have the BMW Open here in town this weekend, so we're going to be watching a lot of pro golfers make their way through Chicago.
Well, have a great time, and I hope the weather is awesome as it's known to be this time of the year.
Did you hear the clip that John Rahm needs to have a porta potty on every single hole?
I've not heard it, but now I have.
Let me just give you just a little piece of that.
I can tell you right now, my priorities are a lot lower than what a lot of people would think. If I go by request, I know this is going to sound very stupid, but as simple as having a freaking porta potty on every hole.
Just wants a freaking porta potty in every hole.
Hey, nature calls. Yeah. We need help.
He's a hot-headed Spaniard. He needs a porta potty in every hole. Get it done. So we just talked a few minutes ago to the guy who's running the tournament from the Western Golf Association. He said they have full coverage here this weekend, beginning tomorrow, for John Rahm.
Well, and unlike a lot of guys who go out and hack with the golf clubs, he can't just go behind a bush. So porta potties would be nice. Absolutely.
I was watching the always colorful John Daly a few years ago, following him around at one of those champion tournaments, and he just disappeared into the woods. Not once, but twice. God knows what was going on in there.
Well, he likes to party, so maybe that bladder was full.
Mr. Emanuel, thank you, sir. Hopefully we'll talk next Wednesday.
Always a pleasure.